Hey everyone, welcome to this week's midweek update. As I thought about this whole pandemic thing going on and everybody's opinion and everybody's idea about news, and somebody hears one thing someplace and they believe it as fact, and then they add their spin on it, and they say, hey, I read this on the internet, or I got this on Facebook, and they share it with somebody else. Then that next person gets that and they take and develop their spin on it. Who knows what the truth is? And there's a lot of fact running around out there and a lot of confusion, and different people form their opinions, and then they decide how they ought to respond, and somebody else forms their opinion and how they ought to respond. And there really has been a lot of confusion, and I think a lot of disunity in the church as well as in our community. And if any place we should have unity, it should be within our church bodies, not just locally, but throughout the region. So I just wanted to, for me personally, take a step back, catch a breath of fresh air, and determine, what can I do to live on the basis of truth rather than development of ideas that have become facts that get misunderstood, they get passed on, say, well, I heard this and we should do that. So let me go back to an old passage that many of you have probably memorized before. I've memorized it. I've looked at it. But I want to look at this passage from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, maybe from a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh perspective on this, especially as it relates to everything that we've been hearing, but not just how we're hearing, but how we react and how we respond to one another. Let me read that familiar passage to us. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. It is so easy to have read something so many times, to have heard it so many times, that we almost get inoculated against the freshness, against the truth, against the depth of what's there. If I go back and I read this in the Hebrew, there's some things that we need to point out and kind of expand upon just a little bit. So let me briefly do that. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart. That whole idea of trust, it's that confident, sure, boldness, almost carelessness. Not that I'm careless, but I could care less about what the consequences are from this world, because I trusted in God. I want to trust in God no matter what. And so as the writer of Proverbs, as Solomon wrote this, I want to trust in God, trust in Yahweh, trust in the Lord, to the point that I could care less about what this world says or about what others say. This whole idea of trust, it's confident, sure, bold, and I could care less about anybody who disagrees. We hear the word Lord, we hear the word God so many times in Christian circles. If we look at it from the writer of Scripture's perspective, I trust in Yahweh. Yahweh is this covenant-keeping God. Yahweh is this personal, eternal, sovereign Lord that gave himself a name for the people to be able to relate to personally. And so here, I want to trust, carelessly, boldly trust in a God who's personal. And he says, trust in him with all your heart. Not part, not just when it's convenient, not just most of the time, but trust in God with all your heart, with everything that we hear, pandemic or no pandemic, somebody else's opinion that we agree with or somebody else's opinion we don't agree with, conflicting news, whatever it happens to be. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now that takes intention, that takes a choice that we have to do. As we work our way on down to the passage here, and on your own understanding, lean not. That's kind of the literal way that the Hebrew would translate that for us. And on your own understanding, lean not. This word of understanding is my perception, my wisdom, my knowledge, the meaning. In other words, how I perceive things, how I figure things out, how I process all of what's going on. I form my own perception. And on that perception, we're told in Proverbs to lean not. Don't lean up against it as though somehow it's going to support you. Don't trust my own perspective. I'm fallible. I am capable of error. Oh, way more than I would ever want to admit. But on my own wisdom and knowledge and the way that I extract meaning, lean not on that. Don't support, don't rest, don't rely on my own perspective. Many times we think, well, I've got a good perspective. I know what I think. I know what I want. But the writer of Proverbs here is saying, don't do that. Don't lean on your own understanding. Don't rely on it. Now, obviously, the answer to that is, the question is, what do I rely upon? Well, it's obvious here from the passage. Verse 6 says, in all of your ways, acknowledge him. In all of your ways, acknowledge him. I'm reminded of a passage in Isaiah chapter 55, verse 9. And I'm told here in Isaiah 55, verse 9, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. In other words, God is saying, I've got this figured out. I've got this. And don't let your ways, your thinking, your mindset get in the way and mess up your life. Let his ways be higher. Let his thoughts be higher. Focus on him. Don't trust in your own understanding, but in all your ways, acknowledge him. This idea of ways, and all of your ways, means it's a broad meaning here. Your road, your course, your custom, your life way, all of your life way, all of your ways that you process stuff. In all of your ways, acknowledge him. The word acknowledge, it's kind of a primitive root, and it simply means to recognize, to designate, or to know. Now, we can know facts and we can know people. And in the Hebrew, it's kind of a broad focus here, and it means either one. When you know a person, you get to understand them at a deeper level. When you know a fact, when you know it's truth, you know it at a deeper level than when you first heard it. And so in all your ways, acknowledge him. In all your ways, acknowledge him. Acknowledge who God is. Acknowledge him in your ways. Trust him in all of your ways. And if we do this, if we trust in Yahweh with all of our heart, on our own understanding, we lean not. And if in all of our life course, our life path, we keep checking in with God, and we acknowledge him, we trust him, we recognize him, we designate him, we know him, then the latter part of verse 6, if we do that, and he shall direct your paths. Now, there's been a lot of confusion about that, but it has to do with this path. It's kind of that well-trodden road, sort of the common path of life, the way that I live my life. And it says here, he will direct your paths. The word direct means to make straight, make right, make pleasant, make prosperous. God's going to figure it out, the way that I live, the course of my life. If I will trust in the Lord with all my heart, if I will lean not on my own understanding, if I will acknowledge him in all my ways, he's going to lead me. He's going to direct me. And that's where I want to go. I want to leave you with that this week as you trust God with all of your heart and let him direct your paths.